Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are coming in from. Welcome to Joyosity. I'm Jen Whitmer, and I'm so glad that you are here today because, oh my gosh, I am so excited about our guest. So I'm going to give a very short introduction because I cannot wait to introduce you to Jakob Knudsen. I was thinking about Jakob, who is the CEO and co-founder of Butter, which is an online collaboration tool. And I couldn't help but think about the first time I did an online meeting. And this was well before the pandemic. And it was all like jerky and garbled. And I was like, okay, I know this is better than nothing, but it's got to get better. And Jakob and his team have thought about that as well because of the power of collaboration on your team. So I am so excited that he has come to join us today because we're going to talk about how you make your collaboration smooth as butter, but in your remote teams, in your hybrid teams, and in person. So Jakob has started multiple companies. And the latest, as I said, is Butter, which is an online collaboration tool that I have had so much fun playing with recently. If you have been on my Instagram, you've seen me do it. So I am just so excited to welcome Jakob today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. Excited to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here. I cannot wait for this conversation. And so, first of all, I always like to start with who you are and where you're coming in from. So, give us an idea of how you got to this place in the world.
Yeah, I'd love to give a little fly-in. So my name's Jakob. I'm currently based in Copenhagen in Denmark. Started my career as a consultant, strategy consultant, went to Indonesia, built a digital marketing agency, went home to Denmark, built a startup within game streaming. Didn't quite work out, so that was a very quick fly into the journey, but we stuck together as kind of a founder team after we shut down our past startup. And when the pandemic started, we had already worked together remotely in our past startup. So we started helping out other teams, startups, companies that were having trouble working together remotely, collaborating remotely. And we did that through workshops and trainings for these people. And now I'd done a lot of trainings and workshops before, but it turned out it was incredibly difficult to do these workshops online. They were just like totally deprived of joy.
I feel you as a speaker who went from in person to
hmm
online. I was like, it's a good thing I'm high energy.
Yeah, that kind of helps. It really helps kind of transfer it through, but you have
But
to
it's not
like
enough. It's
really amp
just
it
not
up, right? Yeah. No,
enough.
it's not enough. It's not enough at all. So that was kind of what we saw. We thought that we used Zoom and a lot of other tools like Miro, Mentimeter, you name it, to kind of try to engage the audience. But we found that it was just super difficult, like huge overload on you as a speaker, on you as a facilitator to try to take people through that. And it was incredibly difficult to get people engaged using Zoom and all of these various tools. So that was why we started Butter as a video conferencing tool, laser focused on online collaboration, especially workshops and trainings.
That's so important. I think as I help leaders in this space talk about working together, the tools
Mm,
that we use to work together are so important. Like when I am leading a workshop, I love big post-it notes and whiteboards, and
mm,
that's challenging to translate into the digital space at times. And
very much.
I'm kind of curious, if you're listening in the audience, did you have to suddenly change your collaboration? So, like, yes, I had to change, or I was already working remote. I would love to know if you're in the comments. So, first of all, I love to define some terms. When we talk about
hmm
collaboration, sometimes people have big feelings, and
hmm
like they either love it or they hate it, or they think it's overused, or they think we don't do it enough. But let's just define. I would love for you to talk about what you see as collaboration and why it's important on teams.
Yeah. I mean, I define it either as working together to create something or to achieve something.
Mm,
And again, very broad, but again, collaboration is a very, very broad thing.
mhm,
Um, and again, the whole concept of working together is very, especially when you think about it online, you very often see the anathema to that is like either working alone without
mhm.
other people or sitting in meetings where there's actually nothing being achieved or nothing being created. So that's kind of how we've defined collaboration in Butter.
Yeah.
And that's also why we like when we started Butter Out, we focused on the most complex types of collaboration, which is often like workshops where you work together to create something, or trainings where you work together to achieve something, namely learning.
Mhm. I really like the simplicity of that definition, though. If I'm trying to work together to create. Like that is what some teams do. I mean, designers and innovators and engineers, they're creating things or achieving something. We are bringing a cross-functional team together, and people come with different ideas, but we've
Yeah.
got one goal that we're trying to accomplish. I think that's such a good, simple definition, very similar to what I think about, because there are times where I need to do my own work, and there are
Mm.
times where I need to come together with other people to create or achieve something, or I need to do my own
Yep.
work before I get there. So when you're thinking about creating butter, so we have a fun question, which is, how did you come up with this name? We adore it, but tell us more.
Thanks. Yeah, like it was right when we started Butter, we said that, oh, what we were making meetings smooth as butter. And we were actually called Meat Butter to begin with. That just sounded really weird. We found out because suddenly, especially as we started getting more US users, America is our biggest market. They started saying meat butter, like a chunk of meat and butter. That's just super odd. So we dropped the meat, and now we just butter.
I love that. Yeah, meat butter. I mean, unless you're making a steak. I mean, I guess I'll cook anything in
Yeah,
butter.
yeah, meat
But
butter. Yeah, basically, yeah, that's
yeah,
good, right?
I do love that. So in that idea of, the US is a lot of where your collaboration happens. It's one of your primary
Mhm.
markets. What are some of the things that people find helpful in collaboration? Because I think sometimes um there are things that are unhelpful when we come together. So what
Um,
are the things that you have found when you're trying to work with a remote first team or a hybrid team that makes collaboration better in this online space?
Yeah, no. So we focus very much on what you call synchronous collaboration.
Mhm.
So work together at the same time. You can also do asynchronous collaboration. And what we saw as important in that is basically both the preparation, like so being prepared before you collaborate, before you
Mhm.
get together to do the actual work, being then when you're doing the actual work, being incredibly engaged and focused and making sure that it's at a high level of dynamism. So everyone are part of the everyone's part of the collaboration. And lastly, recapping the collaboration, so making sure that it's not just left in the session, but also carried over and actually implemented or utilized somewhere afterwards. So this whole like plan, have a dynamic implementation, and then make sure that you recap everything. That's kind of what we've seen. Yeah.
I think the thing that is so important to that is actually what is happening after. Like a lot of times,
100%.
and I can get this way too. As an Enneagram 7, the Enneagram is a personality framework that I use
Ah,
in a
yep.
lot of my trainings. I like to go on to what's next, not
Mm,
necessarily what did we just do. And so it's a
yep.
constant thing. And a lot of leaders face that because they are thinking, what's next? But that recap idea, actually, as a former educator, I know integrates the learning in a
Yeah.
more solid, sustainable way. So we all know what we're supposed to do when we actually leave the meeting. So I think
Exactly.
that's such an important tool. And part of what I have seen in playing with butter is that ability to super easily recap what has happened.
Exactly. Exactly.
Do you
That's also been
find,
a
oh, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Yeah, it's been a super important part of this because again, I was in consulting before, and what I very often saw was consultants coming in, saying a ton of stuff, and then going out of the company and nothing actually happening afterwards. So that's also been core in kind of designing butter. Is like, hey, it's the same with meetings or sessions or workshops, right? You do the work in there, but like having a extremely comprehensive recap and ensuring that that is carried onwards is just such a core part of what we're building.
Yeah, I think it's so important. And to go backwards from that,
Mm.
recap space to that highly engaged space. So one of the
Mm.
other components that I work with when I'm working through my Joyosity model, but is the
Mhm.
importance of play and fun.
100%.
There's lots and lots of different research, but how you learn and how you practice an idea or create something, you have to repeat something. I think that it's somewhere between 400 and 450 times to really learn it, unless you're
Mm.
playing, and then it's under
Mm.
50. And so the
Wow.
joy element of what you're doing inside Butter, I think is part of high engagement. And
Yeah.
so how did you decide that that was what you were gonna do? Because that's such a
Ah,
business, like, we're not, like, we
yeah.
can't always have fun, or that's just quirky, where's the real stuff? How did you come up with that?
So honestly, it was a little bit of a it was a little bit of
I
a
always
I wouldn't
want the
even call
honest.
it I wouldn't even call it random, but it was we had that a little bit in the team to begin with. We were kind of people that were a little bit silly. So when we created the brand, there was a little bit of silliness there, and people responded incredibly well to it. Like the early users were just super excited. Or well, let me say it differently: 60% were incredibly excited, 40% absolutely hated it, and we ended up just leaning into those 60% that were super excited about the way we're not just what we're building, but also the way that we're building things, with tons of ways to basically interact, and with a brand that was just like kind of full of life and silliness and joy.
Enjoy.
So we
Absolutely.
we very much leaned into that, and that's just proven to be a very good decision over time.
I think so. And I love that it came out of just who you were as this team, that it kind of,
mm,
I would love to hear on another podcast what happened, like why the failure,
mm, mm,
boosted this. That would be a great story. But like how
mhm.
you took that as who you are as a team and expressed that. And that's actually what is a great bringing your whole self into that. That
Yeah,
is the magic
100%.
that we bring. And
100%.
when we when I think about highly engaged work, that's one of the powers of play. Is that one of the definitions of play is that you are highly engaged. Like it, time
Mm,
flows. Sometimes we call it flow.
mm,
That highly engaged space. I know that when I bring people in person, when I'm doing in person workshops, I really encourage closing your notebooks, turning off or closing your iPad or your laptop, closing your phone, turning it on do not disturb so you can have that engaged environment. How do you help people do that in that online space where you have to use the tool that is the thing that is distracting you?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think there's two ways that we do it specifically. One way is just when you enter a butter session, it does not feel like a Zoom session. It does not feel like a team session, right? You instantly know you're somewhere else, and that just kind of switches the brain to a different kind of at a different level, if you will. So that's the one thing. The other thing is just when building butter, we've been incredibly conscious about giving tons of way for participants to engage and interact both with each other, but also with the facilitator. And that level of constant interactivity and dynamism just makes sure that people are engaged, that they do not switch their brains off and let their minds wander. So those are
Yeah.
two ways that we've been very conscious about
Yeah.
doing
So atmosphere and actually what I would call novelty.
it.
Because when you have all
Yeah.
these different ways to interact, sorry, I'm taking notes, which is why my pen's out now.
Mm,
Like the novelty is actually what keeps our brains engaged because you can only
mm,
focus for so long on one thing before your brain wearies, and then
yeah.
the law of diminishing returns starts to take over, and our creativity
I
lags.
love that with the novelty. Like there's this model called state change, where you basically utilize a lot of different states throughout a session to make sure that that the brain's not get stuck on anything, and that's something we built Butter very much around, like the ability to constantly state change throughout the session.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think it's one of the things that, things that are utilitarian, sometimes it's like, this is the job, and it's hard to
Um,
get nuance. And what I
mm,
think that you're creating is a space where there's an ability to have difference and novelty and nuance that promotes that genuine engagement in that space. So
mm.
earlier, I'm finding the question. Sorry, I'm not looking at you right now. Oh, so earlier,
No
Hanifa
worries.
asked, outside of workshops and trainings, what are some of the ways that teams have adopted Butter as a communication tool? What are different ways that they're using it besides just training?
Yeah, I mean, we built it specifically for trainings and workshops, which is why we see the vast majority of our users go there. That being said, we see a lot of people use it for brainstorms, especially team brainstorms. We see
Mhm.
people use it for stand ups. We see them use it for community sessions. But like everything where there's a little bit more, we say a little bit more of a level of collaboration in there. One specific feature we have is breakouts. Our breakouts are incredibly powerful. So in all types of sessions where you use breakouts to break people into smaller groups to create that level of dynamism is our sessions where we see Butter used a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks. That's a really great idea. Like there's anytime you're really wanting to just bring people together in engagement, not just one person talking in a
Yeah,
training,
not
but
just one
that kind
person.
of
Yeah, exactly.
interaction.
Like the counter movement, the counter to where Butter is good is like a webinar or like one to many where it's just one person talking. That's not where Butter shines at all because there's zero collaboration in those types of
Mhm.
sessions.
Yeah. I refuse to give those kinds of webinars. I'm just like, I can't. I need you. It is the educator in me as a trainer, as a keynoter. Even in keynotes, I'm like, you are going to participate in this, friends. Otherwise, I'm just a talking head, and it's not a community learning experience where you walk away with something that actually impacts your life. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. So when we think about collaboration, and that, I mean, like we said, we went backwards. So there's the action steps, there's this highly engaged space in collaboration. How do you help people prepare? How do you come to that collaboration center time session ready to go? How do you help people with that?
Yeah. So again, collaboration is only good if you've actually defined what you want to do, what you want to collaborate around. Like a lot of people go to a session and think, oh, let's brainstorm something. Okay, what? And people aren't at the same level, all of that jazz, right? So we made a lot of things and made it easier for people to prepare full agendas up front in Butter, but not just prepare the agenda, also attach what you would call tools. So they can prepare music playlists, they can prepare presentations, whiteboards, flashcards, all kinds of stuff that you want to use throughout the session. You can prepare all of this up front in Butter, and then throughout the session simply launch it. We've also got tons of templates that you can utilize to generate these agendas or to generate these tools up front. So that's kind of how we help people prepare, is ensuring that there's a strong agenda and a strong meaning or purpose to the sessions.
I think the purpose piece is what's so important. I mean, that's why one of the things when I'm consulting in companies and people like feedback comes that there's too many meetings, it's usually because people don't know why they're getting together.
100%. 100%. Yeah. 100%.
It lacks purpose. Like, what are we doing? Why wasn't this an email? Is often the question. But that purpose piece of like, oh, this is why this synchronous together time to create something or to accomplish a goal. That's why this is important in this way. And I think people forget that when they prepare, they actually are more engaged anyway. Like, I've got some skin in the game. I spent some time and I'm ready to come with this. Oh my gosh. I just looked at the time and it's time for us to stop. I have so many more questions for you. So Jakob, thank you so much for, just sharing with us about what collaboration is and what tools are and why that high engagement matters, the preparation, the high engagement, and then the action items at the end that really create that space for high level collaboration. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Please tell the people where to find you, how they can connect with you. Your podcast is here as well. And how can we just keep up with you?
Well, first of all, check out Butter at butter.us or butter.us. It's free to sign up. We have a free trial. It's awesome. If you do anything online collaboration, I'm sure you're going to love it. And secondly, connect with me on LinkedIn at Jakob Knudsen. Well, yeah, I'm very open to connecting. So yeah, I think that's kind of it.
It's fantastic. Well, thank you so much again for your time. I really appreciate the intentionality of why collaboration matters on a team, and that it is possible, as I think Melissa earlier said in the comments, like better tools are needed, and we've got to figure this out because this is not going away. And you're like, I've been doing it for a long time, and some people are catching up, and that our tools really matter in how we collaborate. And so I appreciate your time and expertise and all of the things that you've shared with us today.
Well, it was absolutely wonderful being here, Jen. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so glad. Well, next week, we're going to talk about why people matter at work and why people are the heart of your business. It's a solo mini workshop with me, so feel free to join us. We're live here every week at 1 p.m. Eastern, and we hope that you join us then again. Thanks so much again, Jakob.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
So let me put my coach hat on for just a sec. Don't just leave this here. Take a moment. What did you learn? What's your next tiny action step? Share this episode with someone and tell them. Connect with us to keep this conversation going. As always, I'm Jen Whitmer. Thank you for listening to Joyosity. I don't take for granted that your earballs have a lot of information coming at you. Please take a moment to rate and subscribe. It really helps more people join us in creating positive culture with complex people. So work is a joy, people are whole, and organizations flourish. Can't wait for you to join us next week.